to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. Got Schiff here with my wonderful co-host Derek.
What up?
Starting off with something simple, just doing a little mock draft to get something out there for you guys. We will be recording another episode with our lovely faces in it for you tomorrow. But just want to get something out there, show you guys kind of how we feel about all of the players in this draft this year. It's quite different from last year. If any of you guys have done any mock drafting or drafted any leagues already, you could tell the names that were at the top in the first round last year. Some of them are similar, a lot of them are in very different places. So, yeah, we could go ahead and kick this off. Derek's got the 4 pick, I've got the 7. Doing 3 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, full PPR. And yeah, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, and it just early on, these are consensus top three picks, but then we get to this four pick, and every site you're going to be on, Yahoo, ESPN, NFL, Sleeper, whatever you're drafting on, they're all going to have different ADPs. I don't see many worlds where Justin Jefferson is going fourth at this pick. I see a lot more of Brees if some people are higher on Bijan. And maybe if you're super high on Jamar, he's still not even practicing, so that is scary to me. But me personally, at this pick, I would probably go Brees. I think his upside is insane.
And I do, yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, I really think of all the running backs, Brees, we, we'll talk about another guy a little later. But I think when you look at it realistically, just what the guy's shown, um, he has Braylon Allen there as competition. I don't think he does more than really spell him, or he's there in case he gets hurt. He's going to be a true workhorse, and yeah, I really think he has the best opportunity to give Christian McCaffrey competition for that number 1 running back spot. It's funny, I've seen like a few other podcasts. There's still some people really high on Justin Jefferson just based off of the talent, which I do understand. One thing I think to remember is he's going to have Sam Darnold as his starting quarterback.
Yeah.
We did see him perform with Nick Mullins last year, but it's just, I don't know, something to really keep in the back of your mind. How much scoring opportunity is he really going to have? Another thing you brought up with Jamar Chase, yeah, he still isn't at practice yet, and Zach Taylor doesn't even know if he's going to be out there week 1. So that's a very realistic worry at this point. I know we're drafting in our main league in 2 days. A lot of you guys are going to be drafting for your main leagues, important leagues here this weekend or coming up very soon. And it's scary at this point because Jamar Chase is a guy that we want to lean on. And not knowing if you're going to have him out there for, at the very least the first week, I mean, those are tiebreakers going into the end of the season.
Yeah.
So with my first pick, I I really do like Bijan. I think I'll go Amon Ra here.
I like it.
He feels really safe. I like the floor that he has compared. I mean, there's no question marks, unlike Jamar and Justin Jefferson with the quarterback. So makes it really easy for me, in my opinion. After that, of course, goes Bijan, and then Jonathan Taylor, Garrett Wilson, and AJ Brown rounding out the first and starting the second. And then Saquon Barkley goes to Team 9, which every draft I have done with a computer seems to always pair Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And it is a really good value there at the swing. Um, kind of just interesting seeing the 2 back-to-back teams go 2 running backs to start. But it is something that could happen. As you know, you look a little later down the draft and it can get a little scary. And that is some things that people like to do in real life drafts. They see running backs start to go, they panic and take a running back. So, but this one though, I know we have the scare of, I gotta go Marvin Harrison Jr. here.
I like it as well. Oh, and this one puts me in a weird spot. I know. Why is Kyron returning punts? Why? Why are you having your
It's
running back return punts?
it's a weird thing, and I heard it's like it doesn't necessarily mean that he's gonna return punts all year. He returned punts through the first 3 weeks last year. It just puts the opportunity for him to get injured not doing something that's really gonna get you any fantasy value. So it is scary, and with, you know, Blake Corum there, might have been the best running back in this draft. So we'll see. Kyron is scarier than we'd like him to be, but could also very well finish as a top five back.
Yeah, and that's the tough part here. Looking at who's available, Puka Nakua, his price tag is just incredibly high, and Cooper Cup's been injury ridden, but if Cooper Cup is healthy, which he is coming into the year, but if he stays healthy, it's tough to draft Puka so early when you can get Cooper Cup a couple rounds later.
Yeah, you could get the same value, if not more, like a guy that has been established for years, won the Triple Crown with Matthew Stafford. So yeah, it makes it very tough.
Now, someone I've gotten higher on through the offseason, and in a three receiver league, I hate going to running backs, but there is a lot more depth at the wide receiver. Someone I've gotten pretty high on is Derrick Henry. With the Ravens, a lot of goal lines. We saw how often Gus Edwards got into the end zone. And Derrick Henry, you give it to him within the five, he's probably getting in.
I mean, there is a very realistic path this season to Derrick Henry having 15 touchdowns or somewhere
Yeah.
near that. I mean, it's not out of the question. I like taking Derrick Henry around there, especially with like recent, the rumblings. And this is just one thing. It's like I heard someone say it's like this Kyron Williams news about him returning punts. This
Mm-hmm.
could be the thing that we look back on halfway through or at the end of the season saying, damn it, I really wish that I had either paid attention to or disregarded that news because he's either going to be great or it is, going to have some effect. And it's just one of those things that always like that one year with the Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon 1A, 1B, where
Oh
everybody was
gosh.
taking AJ Dillon higher than he should have gone because of that news that we got from, and it was, you know, so it's just this might be that piece of news that changes a player's ADP a little bit through the draft process that we look back on like
Yeah.
that was pretty pivotal.
No, absolutely. And then here, you know, Ayuk. You see what John Lynch said about Ayuk?
I heard a little about it. I know he was not happy. Said something like to the effect of he wants him out on the field.
Yeah, he said at some point you just gotta play.
Yeah.
And
So
I
that's
truly think Ayuk will play for the Niners this year. I just cannot imagine the Niners giving him up. I feel like that'll hurt their Super Bowl chances pretty heavily without Ayuk out there. Chris Olave has Derek Carr. He is the only weapon there, but Derek Carr has shown signs of some regression coming in as he gets older. Uh,
as a downfield passer, definitely, which will lead to the conversations of a guy a little bit later. I definitely agree with that.
yeah.
Uh, a couple other guys before you get into your pick that I wanted to talk about were just Devon Achan really quickly was a guy that I think definitely has a path to finishing as the number one running back was the guy I was alluding to earlier. It's nothing that is unheard of throughout the offseason. Everybody saw what he did last year. We all have the same concerns. Raheem Mostert is still in that backfield with him. How many touches will he get? Will he get injured again? And also with Jalen Wright back there, with those two, another explosive back, one of the faster Dolphins players. So it just, while we know the opportunity, and it's one of those, it's like, are you drafting the safe pick or are you drafting to get first place? Achan can be a guy that you either look back on and helped you win the championship, or if he's like in a position where I feel less comfortable having him as my RB1, but if I could get him like as my RB2, maybe Derrick Henry or ETN as my RB1, I'd be a little more comfortable in that position.
Yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely. And it's funny because I feel like with running backs, you have more flexibility with playing that game of getting Devon A. Chan later and saying, because he really could finish as the RB1. But when I look at what receivers are left, more than likely none of these guys are going to finish as the wide receiver one. But
yeah, exactly.
there's a guy here that was very consistent throughout his career, honestly, but even last year finished seventh in PPR as a wide receiver. And I have to take him over Ayuk and Chris Olave. And I'm gonna go Mike Evans.
Yeah, I like it. I knew where you were going with that, and I mean, he has not had a season under 1,000 yards. They talk about the age thing. He showed to be Baker's favorite receiver last year. I'm pretty sure they paid him. Um, I don't have any problems with Mike Evans at all going over those two guys. Um, Another just guy I wanted to talk about real quick was Josh Jacobs in the recent events that have taken place in the Packers backfield. He's like the only one there. Um, AJ Dillon got placed on season-ending IR. They're talking about Marshawn Lloyd being. I mean, they were going to put him on IR to start the season. I think they ended up not going with that because they put AJ Dillon on the season-ending IR. But he's like, it's him and like Emmanuel Wilson. So, and one thing that has also been mentioned is Josh Jacobs' contract is very front-loaded for this season. All the money is pretty much in this season. So they are going to run him into the ground. I think he's a very good option. I'm starting to look at him like kind of the way I look at Isaiah Pacheco, maybe a little higher. I'm starting to put him over Kyron Williams a little bit,
Yeah.
but just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I agree with that.
With this one, I mean, so I started two wide receivers, Amon Ra and Marvin Harrison Jr. Realistically, I look right here and I just see like Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, and honestly, with the question marks around Ayuk, and we know the issues with Chris Olave. We know with Derek Carr, we saw some of the games where it was just like it was frustrating to watch. It's frustrating just watching the Saints in general sometimes. I'm gonna go with Nico Collins here as my wide receiver three. Um, I really think even with the signing of Stephon Diggs and how good Tank Dell is, I really think he's going to be the alpha and in a very good offense. So that's where I went. Off the board next goes Mahomes, then Laporta, Chris Olave to round out the third round, Ayuk to start the fourth, then Stephon Diggs,
And there
Cooper
goes
Cup.
Cooper Cup, about 15 picks after Puka Nakua.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. It's like if I could wait and snag Cooper Cup, it's something I'd kind of prefer to do. And here I'm looking at a couple of guys. I could either go quarterback in Lamar or Jalen Hurts. I really don't like getting quarterback this early in the draft, just personally, mm, because I mean the thing. It's I don't know. It's just especially with guys like Jalen and Lamar. Yes, they are going to give you more of that upside with the rushing, but I just like the value at running back and wide receiver here. Whereas later in the draft, I'm looking at guys like even a few rounds later, I'm looking at guys like Kyler Murray and Jordan Love.
Mm-hmm.
Kyler Murray, I really do believe can finish as the quarterback one this year. If he's healthy all season, I seriously
He
believe.
could. He could.
And if I happened to draft like this, I would be a bit more inclined to pair him up with Marvin Harrison Jr. So here I'm going to take a pick that a lot of people aren't going to like as much as my RB1, but you got to remember this is a full PPR. And you looked at what he did last year. They did not go and really improve in the running back room. Yes, they drafted Bucky Irving, but they got rid of Chase Edmonds. I'm going Rashad White. I think he's going to be a PPR demon again this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think in a PPR setting, he's a solid guy to have as an RB1.
No, I completely agree with that. And then right after that, Debo goes and James Cook. And in the off chance Ayuk does get dealt, Debo's value will obviously
Oh, it skyrockets. Him
skyrocket.
and Kittle just,
Yeah,
man.
it will have to. But I mean, that's obviously something to monitor. Again, I just can't see a world where the Niners Super Bowl window with this current roster is closing. This may be the last chance at it. So I just cannot see them letting Ayuk walk. Um, and then coming to me, yeah, I'm looking at the same two quarterbacks, Lamar, Jalen Hurts. The Lamar Derrick Henry stack would be great to have. Um, but I'm gonna hold off on it. And another guy that had a monstrous year last year, and again has fallen down the ranking a little bit, and I just don't completely see why they go out, number one pick, they get him Caleb, they bring in Keenan Allen, and I don't think
They
Keenan
paid
Allen.
him.
Yeah,
They also paid him.
I don't think adding Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, bringing in DeAndre Swift, I don't think these guys make it a worse case for DJ Moore. I almost think it can help him because now that offense is going to be explosive. It's just going to be. They have all the weapons needed, and the head of that horse starts with DJ Moore. So I go out and I get my second wide receiver.
Yeah, I really like that pick there. And it's, people want to say they got Keenan, they got Roma Dunze, and yeah, I just think it's a better atmosphere. They're going to have the offense on the field a little longer.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be an issue for him.
yeah, no, absolutely. And then after that, Jalen Waddle goes. The two quarterbacks we talked about, Lamar, Jalen Hurts. We had DK and Michael Pittman go, and then we saw CJ Stroud. Then it comes,
Jalen Waddle, who is in a non-contact jersey right now. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
yeah,
And
it's
we're this close to the season. Another worry that of a top 5 round guy that is not currently practicing. And we are less than 2 weeks from the start of the season.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely worrisome to say the least. And then come in here, I look at the running backs. Joe Mixon and Kamara are obviously very enticing, but they also share a bye with both running backs I have here. So then I kind of look down to Ken Walker, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift. I think I can wait and potentially get, a David Montgomery, a Mondre, someone like that the next round. The receivers, Devonta Smith is definitely enticing. I I
I feel
think
like there's a pick that you have to make here.
we may be thinking the same thing. Maybe not. I don't know. But the pick
We'll see.
I really like to make here, and once he took over as,
Oh,
the
damn
guy,
it.
once he
That's
t-
that's where I was gonna go.
once
But
he
all
took
right.
over as the guy, he finished as the number 7 tight end, and he did not play very much the first couple games of the season. So once he kind of came into shape, now with a healthy Kyler, you bring in Maserati Marv. I think the offense could get booming a little bit. I have to go Trey McBride. I think his upside is definitely there.
I mean, I love the pick there. Realistically, if either him or Malik Neighbors fall to me, because that was who I thought like to round out your receiver room. I mean, it's something we've also talked about. Yes, Daniel Jones, yada yada yada. There's just so many vacated targets, and it's like if you truly believe in the talent, and you look at what these first round wide receivers have done that have been drafted that high, it's hard to say like it's like yeah, it's the Giants, but you don't necessarily have to be if you're the only guy that's worth a damn catching passes out there. I mean, it's just so hard to look at Malik Neighbors and pass him up when it gets to this point in the draft. But I feel the same exact way about Trey McBride with a healthy Kyler Murray.
Yeah, the Giants are going to have to do something. Devin Singletary's the running back. They're not going to run it efficiently. I mean, and Malik Neighbors is really their only only dog out there for them, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to avoid going, I mean, I do like Joe Mixon, but I think just when it comes down to PPR and you look at the roster of the Saints, it's Chris Olave, it's Alvin Kamara, and then it's Taysom Hill, like because Dennis Allen is just infatuated with Taysom Hill. Realistically, we know who Derek Carr is, we know who the Saints are, we know who Alvin Kamara is. We're playing full PPR. I'm getting Alvin Kamara as my RB2 here.
That's very solid. Team 10 now has 5 wide receivers on roster.
It's the interesting thing about drafting with computers, but it's like you also look and they got Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, two guys who could easily finish top five. Olave, you can make the argument for him too. Ayuk is, I mean, if he falls that far, it gets hard to keep passing him up. And then Ken Walker and Tank Dell. I mean, I guess it's you go with the strategy of taking as many top 24 wide receivers you have or that you can get while still, he's got Ken Walker. I think wait a little bit and still try to snag like Najee Harris for your RB2. Get a little nasty, but still a guy with some volume, and it's still survivable if with one of your next couple picks you take a running back. But if you avoid the position too much longer and end up with, you know, uh, Devin Singletary at RB2, that's to me where it can get a little bit,
Yeah, I agree.
e- especially for, I mean, we're all human beings. So it's like, especially when you see like those first few games, if like, or whoever you get as your running back doesn't you're going to start wanting to hit the panic button. I've done it before, seen all kinds of people do it before where you'll hit the panic button a little too early and trade away players that you shouldn't because you waited a little bit too long to fill needs. And you gotta, although the value might be there, you have to remember that you have to fill positions. And running back two, you can't really punt like you can tight end and quarterback sometimes. Speaking of tight end, the last guy that I view as a
Mm-hmm.
real potential top, I mean, not real potential because there'll be a guy later that we kind of talk about a little bit, but a guy that I truly view, especially with the questions around Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle really could have one of those Kittle years. I really do believe that if Ayuk leaves, then you're really looking at a top three tight end, in my opinion, that you're getting in round like 6 or 7. But I don't know if that's where I want to go right here. I mean, you have George Pickens, Amari Cooper, I really like around here.
Mm-hmm.
I could get as my flex, another guy I really like. And honestly, that I think I'm going to go with here. It's a little bit under ADP, but sometimes you have to go and do that and get the guys you like. It's gonna hurt Derek a little bit, but I'm gonna go T Higgins, especially just with just the stuff surrounding Jamar Chase right now. T
Yeah.
Higgins is there. I really do think with the healthy Joe Burrow this year, it hurts me to say, I think T Higgins is going to have a great year. So I'll take him as my wide receiver 4, start him in my flex position, and I'm feeling really confident about my starting lineup so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think that's a very solid addition to the lineup. It makes my pick pretty easy. Uh, Already having a tight end, I have 2 running backs. I don't really want to. I just get scared to swing for Anthony Richardson so early. He is obviously incredibly dynamic when he plays. Um, but with the guys still there, with Kyler, with Dak, with Jordan Love later on, I just don't think you have to use a pick this high on an Anthony Richardson. Um, and I'm going to play it safe, especially with, Nick Chubb being out at least the first 4 weeks, they bring in Jerry Judy, they have Elijah Moore, but Deshaun's guys he's going to target is going to be Amari and David Njoku. I'm going to go ahead and grab my third wide receiver
Yeah,
and get Amari Cooper.
I love the Amari Cooper pick there. Yeah, see, Kyle Pitts go next, and that's a funny one. Not going to talk too much on him. It's tempting, right? Because they got Kirk Cousins now. You want to think like you saw what he did as a rookie, the 1,000-yard season. I just don't want to spend a pick around here when you look at who's going around him. I mean, going after is James Conner, who I think can have another productive year on an
Mm-hmm.
offense that's going to be. I think the Cardinals are going. I mean, you see the faith that we've put in the Cardinals offense with our high stock in the picks, but I think the offense is going to be much better. And yeah, it's like you talk about Anthony Richardson, and he's going higher than Kyler Murray. And we like Anthony Richardson because it's like we think he can be what Kyler Murray has been. But it's like Kyler Murray is still Kyler Murray. So
Yeah.
I'll take Kyler Murray later and get more value in other positions along the way and let someone else, take that ride with Anthony Richardson. If I end up being wrong there, that's fine by me because I still think Kyler's going to end up as a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's just very fair to think that as well. Um, this and again before this, my reasoning here is, and I'll see what it looks like coming back, but I think it's gonna thin out a little bit. Um, and I think he's gonna take a step forward. It's not our job to talk about whether he should be in trouble or should not be in trouble, but I'm going Rashi Rice. I think it's gonna be a breakout season for him, and
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised he's not facing any trouble. He was drag racing Lambos on the freeway, but hey, for us fantasy wise, I'm glad because in the 7th round, again, should be the wide receiver one there. So now looking at the roster, having 4 wide receiver 1s on the team, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, and with Rashi Rice, yeah, you talk about he's going to be the wide receiver one on the Kansas City Chiefs, who, I
Hollywood's
mean,
already hurt.
yeah, and I think we talk about regression, and the Chiefs scored under 400 points last year, and I think the past 3 seasons before that they scored over 400. So I'm pretty sure their offense is going to look a little bit better this year. And realistically, I want like all the pieces that I can get of that offense. It's like Rashi going in the 7th. In a lot of the mocks that I've been doing, I try to get him in either the 6th or 7th round because I mean, it's kind of like that Alvin Kamara thing a couple years ago where his ADP just kind of it dropped through the floor a little bit because everybody had those questions of whether or not the suspension was coming that season. And I think it ended up coming 2 seasons later. So we've seen a lot of the time the NFL doesn't deal with these things right away. And they kind of let it go through the court process and let that happen first, which I'm pretty sure the court date isn't until like December 9th.
Yeah, it takes a
So
while.
we're good on Rashi Rice. If I love that pick there. Like I said, I've taken him in the 6th in box before. So here it's a little tough. I mean, the running backs start to thin out a little bit, as well as for me, the biggest drop off around here is the talent in wide receiver. I really do like Christian Kirk. Um, One thing about Christian Kirk is I kind of also like taking Brian Thomas later in drafts. So I've avoided Christian Kirk a little bit just for that reason, because I don't like having too many wide receivers on the same team. But I think the guy that I'm going to go with here is
I know you want
honestly
him.
Evan Ingram.
I really like that pick.
I don't like making it. I'm gonna be 100% honest. It's not a pick that I am like in love with. Like if I were to have gotten Trey McBride or if Kittle had fallen to me in the sixth. But if we're being realistic, look at how many targets and receptions Evan Ingram had last year. Showed he was reliable. If Trevor Lawrence is still Trevor Lawrence, like he went through a bit of a rough patch last year, but I'm pretty sure he finished like the last 4 games, he had like 3 or 4 top 10 quarterback finishes. And I just really do think Evan Ingram is going to be a PPR monster again. And like I said, you got to pay attention to what format you're playing in. Might not be the sexiest pick like Rashad White and Alvin Kamara, but we love those targets. We love those
And
receptions. That's what wins us weeks.
the crazy part is you get him here in the seventh, and what there'd been 3, 6, 7. You got him as the eighth tight end off the board. And the 2 years in Jacksonville, Evan Ingram finished in 2022 fifth or amongst tight ends, 98 targets, 73 catches, and then last year second in tight ends, 143 targets, 114 receptions, almost 1,000 yards. I mean, for where you're getting him, there all signs point that he should and could finish, top five, possibly top three, depending on the health of Christian Kirk, who just came back from a calf injury, but again was already banged up. They bring in a guy like Gabe Davis, who's known to make big plays, but he's not a guy you throw to 10 times a game. Evan Ingram should get his targets.
Yeah, I definitely believe he will. And like I said, it's not the sexiest pick, but sometimes it's the pick that you have to make, and
Yeah,
it's the pick that is going to keep your team in contention.
yeah,
We see Christian Kirk go off the board right after that.
yeah.
Then Joe Burrow, who I do like, would have been pretty cool to pair him with T. Higgins, but
Don't do it.
realistically, if I'm going, it's just when I'm picking a quarterback, I prefer getting a guy who I know is going to get me some points on the ground.
Yeah,
Because that's just, and especially you look at the guys that are going around him. I just feel like there's too much value in other positions where if you're not getting one of those top five quarterbacks, they're just not, it's not going to be worth taking a quarterback there when you could have gotten a David Montgomery, a Chris Godwin, who they're moving back to the slot, you know. So that's just where I lie with that. And even, the Dak Prescott. Um, and here I do like Jaden Reed. I like Xavier Worthy, but I can't let my guy Kyler fall
mm-hmm.
any farther.
I figured it's a good stack to get to.
Yeah.
See, and it's crazy in these that you know Rashi Rice had a bit of a slow start to the season, and then towards the second half, obviously Travis Kelsey was a little banged up, but we really saw Rashi Rice start pouring it on. This isn't a knock to Xavier Worthy; it's more so singing to the value you get from Rashi. I think it's crazy they're going basically one round apart when Rashi finished that rookie year with 102 targets, 80 catches, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, Xavier Worthy is going to be or should be their big play guy, trying to emulate somewhat what they had with Tyreek when they had him, but it's just I really like the value we get with Rashi. And this pick's a hard one for me. Because I really do like Jaden Reed, but in my case, and also the case you were in, four receivers, it's hard to draft a fifth when we, have two running backs. You didn't have a tight end. It's like, it'd be cool to have Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, but it's, you kind of got to fill your needs. Um, and I'm going to go with someone that the last 4 weeks of the season was um, a top four rusher in the NFL. And with Josh Jacobs leaving, I just don't see that changing. And truly, with the running backs that are left, I know Raheem Mostert has a pretty high upside, but he is really starting to get up there in age. He had a crazy fantasy season last year, but again, with Achan moving forward, we just have to see how that plays out. But someone I know that's going to get bell cow carries is Zamir White. He's going to get at least 15 a game every single game with no competition. So, and of course, Mostert goes the pick after. I
Yeah.
expected that. How do you feel about the Zach Moss Chase Brown dynamic?
Um, in Dynasty, I feel good about it because whoever ends up being the starter, I have both of them on my team through some odd stroke of luck.
That's fair.
But realistically, I think Zach Moss is going to, for at least the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I mean, I think it'll be his job until Chase Brown kind of plays him out of it
Mm-hmm.
if he has the opportunity to. We saw what Zach Moss did when given the opportunity for the Colts last year. Now, I don't think their offensive line is as good run blocking as the Colts is because we saw how inefficient Joe Mixon has been on the ground through the last few years, but he got it done through the air. I do believe Zach Moss was catching plenty of passes. And I mean, I don't know. I think he's reliable. He's good at the goal line and just kind of provides what the Bengals need. Chase Brown will be a good change of pace back, might be like a good 1-2 punt. It's just hard to really say, but going into the start of the season at the very least, I like Zach Moss. And if you're in a position like, team one we're in, where they picked Achan and they sat on the running back position for the next 4 rounds, um, getting Zach Moss and Javonte Williams there, guys who it's just cheap volume to fill that void. I don't hate it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And just because by the time this comes back, I think it's going to be even thinner. And I'm going to grab another wide receiver one. And again, he's on one of the worst offenses in the league, but I'm hoping the change of scenery can do well for him. I'm going to go Deontay Johnson here. I really like Keon Coleman, but I know Deontay can play well, and he had a somewhat of a good connection with Bryce Young in the preseason when, they had whatever playing time they had together, but we will see.
Yeah, and I mean, two guys that I really like going in this round are Calvin Ridley and Deontay Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I really think they have the opportunity to be top 24 guys, and you're getting them down here damn near in the 10th round, like halfway. I mean, pick 3 and 4, so kind of in the beginning of the ninth round, but still, it's like a great value for guys who could end up getting it done for you. Um, a couple reasons why I like waiting later in the draft for tight end and quarterback is you look at the options that I have right here. I was able to get my guys, Evan Ingram, not really calling him my guy, but we talked about the stats and the opportunity, and you can't really turn your nose up at that if you're a realistic fantasy football player. Kyler Murray, however, is my guy, and I got him, so I'm happy. But you just look at the value that's still left on the board at the two positions. We talked about David Njoku, he's been iffy
Mm-hmm.
in his tenure as a football player in general. But we saw what he was able to do last year. Whether or not he will repeat that, he's still a guy that's probably going to finish as a top 10 tight end. Still available here, as well as Jake Ferguson, who I actually like better.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, still two guys that are available, along with his quarterback, Dak Prescott and Jordan Love. So it's kind of a reason why I don't really like pulling the trigger on Anthony Richardson a few rounds like earlier. It's not really worth it to me when there's guys who I believe will finish a little bit higher a couple rounds later in the draft.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting here with only two running backs and four wide receivers. I'm going to take a guy here on a team with a head coach that just loves running. He loves running the football. That's Arthur Smith, head coach of the
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll take Jalen Warren. I
Great
mean, he
gadget,
might
yeah.
not split the carries with Najee like he did last year, but you know he's going to get work. You saw the work that Tyler Algier got in that offense. We all know that Jalen Warren is a talented back, so
Yeah, he had
uh,
74 targets last year.
yeah,
Caught 61 of them.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, he's getting the ball out the backfield. He is.
So that's just something that and now I got my RB3 kind of taken care of. I think I can look back to wide receiver. We talked about, you mentioned Keon Coleman could very well end up being the wide receiver one there when you look at that depth chart. You have Curtis Samuel, who's already week to week dealing with turf toe. Khalil Shakir, who I just don't really, we talked about, he'll probably be the guy
Yeah.
starting in the slot. He's just not, I don't see him starting on the outside. And I mean, this is what they drafted Keon Coleman for. So I think I'm going to take my shot on him, especially being my wide receiver 5. I don't need him to produce early in the year. That late round championship push with Josh Allen is kind of what I'd be hoping more for.
Yeah. I like that pick a lot. And then there goes Brian Thomas right after,
Yeah,
and
I
I kind
see
of
him go right
expected that.
after.
D
Yeah.
Hop, who is banged
Still
up.
a good option, but yeah, currently banged up.
There's optimism he'll play in the opener, but I mean, we don't honestly know. He's also getting up there in age, so it's like those injuries start to scare us a little more and more on how quick they can bounce back from them. Um, Looking at what is left here, it starts to get a little bit gross. Um, the tough part, and I'm gonna snag him. I know one of these teams probably. Uh, in this case, I'll try. I'll try to wait and see because I don't think one of these teams in front is gonna take a quarterback here. Um, Someone who I think is gonna take a leap forward is Brian Robinson. Now, I still think Eckler can play well, but it seems like these past couple years we've seen like Dalvin had he was still just the absolute guy in Minnesota, fell off. Like, you know what I mean? Just basically disappeared. Zeke was still the guy in Dallas. I guess now him and Dalvin again fighting for that spot, which is hilarious. But we're seeing these running backs go from absolute workhorses to almost being non existent. I'm not saying that's going to be the case with Eckler, but another year of Brian Robinson. He runs the ball efficiently. He had a better season this past one. And for how late we're getting him and looking at who's left, it's like Jonathan Brooks, yes, but I already have Deontay, and I don't necessarily want to add another Panther to my lineup because that's a bit disgusting to do. So I'm gonna take Brian Robinson.
Yeah, and it's like even as a pass catcher last year, Brian Robinson was very good. I think he caught like the highest percentage of targets for a running back. And even then, it's like you look at Austin Eckler, and to me, it's like he at this point is a guy. It's like he'll be used like a third down back. The guy like, okay, if the quarterback's in trouble, needs a check down. But Jaden Daniels is a very dynamic rookie who played 5 years in college, so it's not like
Mm-hmm.
he's got experience, and he had a great preseason. And when quarterbacks are a bit more dynamic athletes, they take off before they check it down a lot of times. So to me, that just takes away from the value of Austin Eckler a little bit more. Whereas with Brian Robinson, he's going to be in there for the designed runs. He's going to be in there on the
Yep.
goal line. So, and I think the Washington Commanders are going to be a little bit better on offense this year.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. And of course, I get bit in the butt. Both the first two teams take Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, even though they have Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. I don't necessarily know how realistic that is, but again, when you're drafting with the computer, things like this happen. Like,
Yeah, and it's like you'll always have your league mates that think they need to take a backup quarterback rather than getting the value. And as irritating as it is, it's what happens when we have to have backup plans. But I like who you have available, the stack that you could get.
and you know what's crazy is I don't want to take it. That's the crazy part. And the only reason I don't want to take it is I'm still looking at one guy who's a
Mm.
number one receiver that is going to get volume. The number two receiver is now gone. I feel like I have to take Cortland Sutton here. And the only reason is you let Jerry Jeudy go. You held on to Tim Patrick for 3 years while he's hurt just for him to get healthy and then cut him finally. I I don't know. But it's Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and Josh Reynolds. I
Yeah, and they have
just
like Devon Vele out of Utah. And yeah, it's
and Troy
not much there.
Franklin. Yeah, there's not
Yeah, and
much
Troy
there.
Franklin. Yeah.
I'm gonna roll the dice one more time, only because also you have someone that's still here, Jared Goff. Jared Goff finished the past 2 years the number 10 quarterback and the number 7 this past year. Jared Goff could still have a very solid season. Tua is still here. He finishes the number 9 quarterback this past year. And again,
And
these
Tua
guys are,
always starts hot.
yeah, I was going to say, Tua's a bit more inconsistent, but again, when you're loading the rest of your lineup, you're going to every team's going to have some not necessarily weak position, but if I have to roll the dice on a quarterback and I still can end up with a Jared Goff, I'm going to be happy with it. So I'm going to take Cortland Sutton here. I'm going to get the fifth wide receiver. And there goes
No, yeah, and I
Caleb with
like
Anthony
that.
Richardson. And that makes sense in that case because Anthony is a bit injury prone. You get a Roma Dunze, Caleb Williams stack, not in a dynasty league. That's a
It's just yeah, that it's like you look at that team, and I really have questions, but hey,
5 years from now, that stat could be insane though.
that no, 5 years from now, that team would be ridiculous, but it is today, unfortunately for them. Yeah, Tua would is a good one to wait on. Also talked about Jaden Daniels. He's still on the board. A guy I think that's worth holding off for. Offers a whole lot of upside. Um, I look at what's on the board here. Got Jamison Williams, but I took him on raw with my first pick. So I think I'm going to go with my RB4. Um, Tyjae Spears has been getting a lot of talk and everything. I think Tony Pollard is going to kind of take the running back one spot there. Um, I'm going to go ahead and take Gus Edwards here. I mean,
I like it.
he he's going with Greg Roman, a guy he's been with before. Chargers are going to run the ball a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're decent, we saw what happens when he gets carries at the goal line. He just chugs ahead forward. He's the bus. We're going Gus here as my RB4. I think fill out my running back room.
And they're gonna have to go a little run heavy too. They're just going to
Yeah,
have to.
they just don't have many options in that receiver room.
Yeah.
Um, just kind of taking a look at what's available here. Looking at the running backs, you got Trey Benson. And I mean, this is kind of where, rather than guys like Zeke, I mean, I know I got Gus right there, but I think this is where I start looking at guys like Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Chase Brown, guys who I do believe. And I talked about, Zach Moss, but we saw the talent of Chase Brown last year. And guys that just have a path to being that number one back. And I'll take one that, you know, I think don't wish anything to happen to Blake Corum, but should, you know, yeah, I'm going Blake Corum here. Don't want anything to happen to Kyron Williams, but
And
if anything
Jared
should,
Goff.
I just yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna have to take a quarterback here, but yeah, no, it makes sense. Kyron got banged up. I believe he missed a couple weeks last season.
mm, yeah, he did.
He missed a good chunk. He missed weeks 7 through 11, so he missed 5 weeks last season. Um, and there's two ways to go about getting a running back around here. There's the way, yeah, you get the young guy who they're behind a vet or someone that's known to be a little injury prone, and you get them. And I like that option because the young guys are obviously fresh. Running backs deteriorate a lot quicker than other positions, and the other route is You have two guys here. You have Jerome Ford, who until Nick Chubb comes back, will be the guy there. So if you're thinking it may take Nick Chubb longer than sooner to come back, I mean, Jerome Ford's a great pick. And you also have Chuba, who until Jonathan Brooks came back, we saw last year Miles Sanders does not know how to play football for anyone except the Eagles.
Yeah.
So Chuba is also, I mean, just guys that you know early on are going to get workload if you're thin at running back and you're like, I'm going to need someone to plug in right now. Those are two guys that you could plug in right this second and know that they're going to get volume early.
Most definitely. If you take like the strategy of going, zero RB, and hopefully, even if you do go zero RB, you don't wait this long. But if you do, and you just need guys that are going to be on the field for the first 4 weeks until you could figure out your roster situation, then that's where these guys come to play. The Ezekiel Elliott's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Jerome Fords, the Gus Edwards.
Yeah,
And while granted, Gus could end up being the starter for the Chargers the whole year, it's just the Chuba Hubbards. It's the guys that are going to get cheap. They're rentals. We know that they're rentals, but that's the whole point. It's if that's the route that you choose to go, if that's the way you're constructing your roster. But you also have to remember you got to figure something out in those first 4 weeks. You can't just sit on it because then
exactly.
everybody's going to know that you need something, and then you get yeah. Trades become a lot more difficult when people know what you need rather than you're trying to make moves.
Exactly. So, I mean, in this spot, I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to at least get a quarterback. I've waited a little bit too long on that one, but
As we speak, live and breathe, Brandon Ayuk receives a 4-year extension with $76 million guaranteed. You heard it here on First Team Fantasy.
that's actually huge. Did they say
That
what the
changes.
total?
Yes, $120 million deal, 4 years.
And that's the crazy part is I think Ayuk is very talented, but yeah, 30 mil for him. What? That's what Amon Ra got. I'm pretty sure that exact deal. Maybe not, obviously not the guaranteed part, but I'm pretty sure Amon Ra was 4 year 120. And
Yeah.
that's just, I mean, Ayuk's very talented. Do I think he's that talented? No, but I think he's very close to it, and that's just, I mean, what you have to do to keep your guy. To be honest, like you just,
Yeah, and I think this mock draft is the last time you're going to see Brandon Ayuk go in the fourth round.
yeah, probably so. So, looking at who is left, um, honestly, at this spot, I am going to be the first to take a defense off the board just because we're getting late. Again, I waited quite a while to get a quarterback. You got to hope to kind of hit some home runs on other things. I'm going to take a defense that I don't necessarily think is the greatest defense, but fantasy wise, they are amazing. First place twice in the past 2 years, in second the other year. I'm going to go the Cowboys. They just, they
Yeah,
make
I
plays happen
understand that.
consistently. They have.
Um, typically well, not typically, but in our draft, our real draft, we would have two more picks. And, but given that this is a mock draft for you guys, we're not going to make you sit through those bench picks. But given the way I like to draft, I typically go um, my defense and kicker in my last 2 rounds. So here I'm going to take a shot on another rookie wide receiver. Um, I'm going to go Xavier Leggett.
Mm.
Was also kind of looking at Josh Palmer here. Could end up being the wide receiver one on the Chargers, but then it's like I really look at my roster, and there's really no point that like we know already what Josh Palmer is. And I'm not really going, there's no space for him in between Amon Ra, Malik Harrison, Nico Collins, T. Higgins. And so I'm just going to take a shot on another rookie. throw more upside on my roster and take Xavier Leggett there.
I like that. There's still one guy, and this could be my team's bias, but I feel like there's still one guy on this wide receiver wire that I just don't understand. I don't understand.
Adam Thielen.
No. I mean, yes, Adam Thielen was very good, but no, and I'm gonna take him. It's
Oh, Jacoby.
Jacoby
Yeah.
Myers. I get, there's a change at quarterback, everything like that, but just getting Jacoby in the 14th round does seem like a value pick because he was someone that was he was the wide receiver 24 last year in PPR. I just
No, yeah, definitely. And I mean, he could be a guy that like someone else is lacking depth at wide receiver. He could be a decent part of a trade package. Not that we draft guys to trade them, but that also has to do with knowing your league mates who you play with, and some of our people, our league mates, me included, sometimes can be a little trade happy. But no, yeah, I think that's definitely a good value this late in the draft.
yeah.
Um, like him and Adam Thielen are guys, if you have unfortunate injuries, that you can throw in and not expect to be burned.
No, for sure. And then I just the kicker, if you don't have Justin Tucker, Brandon Aubrey, even I get Harrison Butker this year with how the Chiefs offense is probably going to be, you know, I'm pretty sure like the 4 through 10 kickers was like a 12 to 15 point difference on the year. So it's like, you know, you, kickers is a position you can easily streamline. Where if, you don't have a set kicker, you just kind of you figure it out as you go week by week.
Yeah, and with that being said, I'm gonna go with the guy who plays on the team that always starts hot, has been like the number one team a few times through the first few weeks of the season. Jason Sanders.
I like that.
Just follow the points. Oh, we do have 17 rounds. Okay.
I didn't
I
even
just didn't
realize
scroll down far enough.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't either.
All right. So with that, I am going to go Adam Thielen here, even though I got Xavier Leggett.
It'll come back to me. Tight. Algier goes. That's okay. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get a. I'm gonna pick this tight end just to bring some acknowledgement to him because I have heard very good things about him, and the lack of weapons here could leave him to be a pick. I'm not necessarily saying I would pick him in a draft, but I would keep heavy eyes on him, and it's Ben Sanat. He has been getting
Yeah.
a lot. The talk around him has been very, very high of late.
And the tight end in front of him is Zach Ertz. So the path is there.
Yeah,
The
it
path is there.
absolutely is. And then this guy's actually a guy I could see ending up starting for this team. He's currently listed as the running back 2, but he is a rookie and has shown some pretty good flashes through the preseason. We'll see as the season plays on, but I'm going to take Tyrone Tracy, just another guy to kind of put some eyes onto, do a little more research. He's only got Devin Singletary in front of him, so I mean, his path to starting isn't the hardest in the league.
No, yeah, I really like that. Kind of looked at who's left on the board, and I'd probably, I don't know. Here, I think I'd go like Dontavian Wicks, and just
I like
young
that as
guy
well.
upside.
Christian Watson's shown times where he can't stay healthy if that continues to be the case. The whole thing,
Yeah,
we
and
don't have to
it's
go into it, but you like read into the thing about Christian Watson, like the size of his calves and everything?
no.
Yeah, I won't go crazy into it, but like I think it was one. I don't remember which one. One of his calves was like almost had 2 times the muscle as the other one. So he
Oh
kept,
my God.
yeah, he kept injuring. I don't remember which one. Maybe the one that's overcompensating or the one that was weaker. So he spent a lot of the off season working to like balance them out a little bit because that's what was causing him to continue just injuring it over and over. Random.
Yeah, it is. And that just, I mean, leads right into we don't have a solid, like after last year, we want to think like, yeah, it's Jaden Reed. We really don't know who the number one is in that offense, but it is a good offense, so might as well grab a piece of it in the final round of the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, that will do it for this mock draft. My team, we finished with, let's look at my roster. At quarterback, I had Kyler Murray for my two starting running backs, Rashad White and Alvin Kamara. Does not look good. You probably wouldn't want to watch him play. You just want
Hmm.
to look at the score after the game because how they got that score is gonna be nasty. I'm not gonna deny that, but they're going to get you points, especially in a PPR setting. My receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is just probably got the most solid floor aside from CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill among the first round wide receivers.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., a bit of a shot, but paired him later with Kyler Murray. Also think that offense is going to be very good. I do have questions on whether or not you'll get the return on investment on Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's one of those, rookie wide receivers that you take a shot on, hoping that you get one of those great seasons. And then Nico Collins, talked about him. Evan Ingram at my tight end, then T at my flex, Jason Sanders, San Francisco, then Jalen Warren, Keon Coleman, Gus Edwards, Blake Corum, Xavier Leggett, Adam Thielen, and Dontavian Wicks, rounding out my team.
No, that's a very solid team, especially from the 7 spot. People always want to draft towards the front or the very end. Those middle spots, once you really, I'd say 5 through 8 are kind of gross. Or what they say, you know what I mean? Is like the toughest spots to draft from. So, I mean, that's an incredibly solid team to walk away with. Um, at the 4 spot, yeah, my quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I would probably, if I could do it over, get a quarterback sooner. I'd probably take a Jordan Love, but that's okay. We ended Trevor Lawrence. We had Brees and Derrick Henry leading the way in the backfield. Some solid vets at the receiver spot: Mike Evans, DJ Moore, and Amari Cooper. Trey McBride, a young tight end, drafted him pretty early. He's one of the guys I feel fairly high on. He played very well towards the end of the last season. And again, we're high on Kyler coming back this year and being impactful fantasy wise, and Trey McBride would definitely be a part of that. Um, Rashi as my flex, and then you have the Cowboys defense and Kaime Fairbairn as the kicker, and then off the bench you have Zamir White, Deontay Johnson, Brian Robinson, Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, and Ben Sinnott, and Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, another good one. I think, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value through those middle picks. And I think just the most important thing is worrying less about, I want to start running back, or I want to start receivers. It's just taking the best player available and filling in the spots as you go. In my opinion, I've tried to do the opposite throughout years. There's one year where I panicked at running back, and who was it I drafted?
Mike Davis.
Mike Davis.
Mike
And it's
Davis.
because that's what happens if you follow trends.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
you end up getting caught, and then you look back at the draft like, what the hell was I thinking? And it's kind of just staying the course, drafting the best player available. And if you end up getting in a position where it's like, like, oh, we're 5, 6 rounds in, and I don't like the running backs on the board, look a little later for the guys that are going to give you cheap volume.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just panic.
Mm-hmm. Every draft's going to be different. You can go in with a certain mindset on how you're wanting your draft to go, but if the picks aren't falling the way that you've game planned for, you have to be able to adjust on the spot. And as Schiff said, sometimes taking the best guy available is just your best option.
Yeah, you don't want to panic pick.
Yeah,
Because you
absolutely.
start tilting and then you look at your roster after, like, what have I done?
Yeah.
A lot of us have been there before. It's tough to admit, but That's why you got to just stay the course. But with that, that'll wrap up our first episode. It's good to have you guys back. It's good to be back. Derek, you got anything to say before we close this one out?
No, I'm just happy to be back. Right now, I almost just blanked on your famous catchphrase. You gotta hit him with it. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Unfortunately, you guys can't see me this one, but you will next one. But always come back next time, take more reps with the first team.
Yes, sir.